The waitress secretly exposed the billionaire's girlfriend in public. What he did next was unreal. The restaurant froze in a single breath. Crystal glasses stopped mid-air. Forks hovered above plates. A woman in a red dress smiled across the table from a powerful billionaire, while behind her, a waitress lifted a bold white sign that screamed a shocking accusation. At the same time, a hand reached down toward a hidden basket filled with cash. Gasps rippled through the elegant dining hall. No one knew whether to laugh, scream, or run. And the billionaire? He didn't blink. He simply stared at his girlfriend with a look that promised the night was about to explode into something nobody would forget, every second stretched like a ticking bomb. Wealth, romance, betrayal, and a fearless waitress collided under golden chandeliers. What began as a quiet luxury dinner was turning into a public courtroom. And when the billionaire finally stood up from his chair, the entire room realized this was no ordinary confrontation. This was the beginning of a reckoning. The waitress secretly exposed the billionaire's girlfriend in public. What he did next was unreal. The restaurant froze in a single breath. Crystal glasses stopped mid-air. Forks hovered above plates. A woman in a red dress smiled across the table from a powerful billionaire, while behind her, a waitress lifted a bold white sign that screamed a shocking accusation. At the same time, a hand reached down toward a hidden basket filled with cash. Gasps rippled through the elegant dining hall. No one knew whether to laugh, scream, or run. And the billionaire? He didn't blink. He simply stared at his girlfriend with a look that promised the night was about to explode into something nobody would forget, every second stretched like a ticking bomb. Wealth, romance, betrayal, and a fearless waitress collided under golden chandeliers. What began as a quiet luxury dinner was turning into a public courtroom. And when the billionaire finally stood up from his chair, the entire room realized this was no ordinary confrontation. This was the beginning of a reckoning. Billionaire Adrian Voss was known for control. Control of markets. Control of people. Control of silence. That evening, he had reserved the entire private wing of La Lumiere, the most expensive restaurant in the city. Candles flickered like tiny suns. Violins whispered through the air. His girlfriend, Lila Monroe, sat across from him in a red dress worth more than most people's rent. "You look tense," Lila said sweetly, swirling her wine. Adrian smiled. "Big deal tomorrow. I wanted tonight to be peaceful." And for a moment, it was. Until the waitress came. Her name was Clara. She had been serving them quietly all night, refilling glasses, clearing plates, watching, listening. Then suddenly, she stepped behind Lila's chair and raised a large sign above her head. "She is stealing your cash." The room gasped. Lila froze mid-smile. Adrian slowly turned his head. "What is this nonsense?" Lila snapped, standing up. "Are you insane?" Clara's hands trembled, but she did not lower the sign. "I'm not insane," Clara said. "I'm tired of watching lies happen right in front of me." Managers rushed forward. "Miss, put that down right now." But Adrian raised one hand. "Wait," he said calmly. The room went silent. Clara swallowed hard. "Sir, I didn't plan to do this. But I've seen her drop envelopes under the table every time you leave. I've seen her pass them to someone outside. And tonight," she reached for this. She pointed down. Under the table, partially hidden by shadow, sat a small basket stuffed with $100 bills. Lila kicked it backward with her heel. "Ridiculous." She laughed nervously. "You believe a waitress over me?" Adrian stood up slowly. "I believe evidence," he said. The crowd leaned forward like a single creature. Adrian knelt and lifted the basket. "Thousands of dollars." Clara whispered. "She's been doing this for weeks." Lila's face turned pale. You don't understand. I can explain. Adrian raised his voice. Explain why you need cash when you have access to my accounts? Silence. Then Lila screamed, "This is a setup." Adrian turned to Clara. Why now? Clara's voice cracked. Because my brother lost his job after someone laundered money through the kitchen. I saw her use our restaurant to hide it. I couldn't stay quiet. The guests murmured. Adrian straightened his jacket. Everyone, stay seated. He looked at Lila. Tonight, he said, we find the truth. Asterisk instead of yelling. Adrian smiled. That scared everyone more. He pulled out his phone and dialed one number. Lock all my accounts, he said calmly. Now, Lila's eyes widened. Adrian, stop. You're embarrassing me. He didn't look at her. I want to see who panics first. Minutes passed. Lila began sweating. Then her phone buzzed. She grabbed it too fast. Adrian noticed. Who is texting you? He asked. No one? He took the phone from her hand. A message flashed on the screen. Did you get the money yet? Hurry. The room erupted. Clara whispered, That's him. The man who waits outside every night. Adrian's jaw tightened. Security, he said softly. Guards moved toward the doors. Lila collapsed into her chair. I was going to stop, she cried. I just needed one more time. One more time to steal from me? Adrian asked. She reached for his arm. I loved you. He stepped back. No, he said. You loved my silence. Asterisk. The doors of the restaurant closed behind Lila with a heavy echo, and for several seconds no one moved. The music had stopped. The candles still flickered, but the mood had transformed into something sharp and electric, like the air before a storm. Clara stood near the table, her hands still shaking, while Adrian remained perfectly still, staring at the basket of money as if it were a venomous creature. Guests whispered among themselves. Some pulled out their phones, but security quickly stopped them. Adrian did not want this turning into a spectacle of gossip just yet. He wanted answers. He turned to Clara. Sit, he said gently, pulling out a chair for her. She hesitated. Sir, I should go. I've already done too much. You've done exactly enough, Adrian replied. Now tell me everything. From the beginning. Clara swallowed hard and sat down. Her voice trembled at first, but as the words poured out, her courage grew stronger. I noticed her habits weeks ago. Every time you left the table, phone call, restroom, greeting investors, she reached into her purse. She would drop envelopes under the table. Sometimes she slipped them into the waiter station trash bin. Once, I followed her outside during my break. A man in a gray coat waited near the back door. She handed him a small bag and smiled like nothing was wrong. Adrian clenched his jaw. Why didn't you report it sooner? Because no one would believe me, Clara said softly. She's beautiful. She's rich. And I'm just a waitress. That sentence landed like a punch in the room. Adrian stood and began pacing slowly. His mind was already connecting invisible lines, transactions, missing funds, strange withdrawals his accountants couldn't trace. What had once looked like clerical errors now felt like betrayal with fingerprints. I want every camera feed from this restaurant, he said to his security chief. Inside and outside, tonight, every night she's been here. Within minutes, a tablet was brought to him. Footage rolled across the screen. Lila could be seen slipping something beneath the table. Another clip showed her passing a bag to a man outside. Another showed her glancing around nervously before returning to her seat and smiling sweetly at Adrian. The guests who had stayed silent began murmuring again. Louder this time. Clara whispered, I knew I wasn't imagining it. Adrian exhaled slowly. You were right. But the story did not end there. When police questioned Lila that night, she broke faster than anyone expected. Tears, anger, then resignation. I wasn't alone, she said. You don't understand. There are others. Investors, executives, people who hide money through restaurants, charities, small businesses. I was just the middle step. Those words hit Adrian harder than the betrayal itself. This wasn't just about his girlfriend. This was about his empire. By morning, Adrian had launched a private investigation. Auditors flooded his offices. Bank records were reopened. Shell accounts emerged like shadows in daylight. The gray-coated man was identified as a courier, linked to a laundering ring that had infiltrated several high-end businesses. Clara was called to Adrian's office the next day. She arrived in the same uniform she always wore, feeling small inside a building made of glass and steel. "You don't belong in that outfit anymore," Adrian told her. "I don't own anything else," she said quietly. He handed her a folder. Inside was an official contract. Compliance assistant. Salary triple what you made at the restaurant. Training paid for. Protection included. Clara stared at the paper. "Why me?" "Because you spoke when silence was easier," he said. "And because people who tell the truth are rare." Her eyes filled with tears. "I only did what I thought was right. That's exactly why you belong here." As days passed, the scandal spread quietly through powerful circles. Adrian refused to let it become tabloid drama. Instead, he turned it into something strategic. He made public statements about transparency. He created a new department focused entirely on ethics and accountability, and Clara became its face. Employees whispered about the waitress who exposed the billionaire's lover. Some admired her. Some feared her. But no one underestimated her again. Yet the danger was far from over. One night, as Clara left the building, a car slowed beside her. A window rolled down. "You should have kept quiet," a man's voice said. Her heart raced. "Who are you?" "Someone who lost money because of you." The car drove off. She reported it immediately. Adrian doubled her security. "You're not just a witness now," he told her. "You're a threat to criminals." "I never wanted this," Clara admitted. "Truth rarely asks permission," Adrian replied. Meanwhile, Leela's name vanished from society pages. Court documents replaced her glamour photos. Friends who once praised her elegance now avoided her entirely. Her silence was louder than any apology. One afternoon, Clara found herself standing in front of the same restaurant where everything began. The sign was still there. The table still set. But she no longer belonged to that life. She remembered the moment she lifted the sign. The fear, the weight of every stare. The risk of losing everything. And somehow, by risking it all, she had gained more than she ever imagined. Adrian joined her outside. "You could have walked away," he said. "Why didn't you?" She thought for a moment. "Because if I stayed quiet, I would have become part of it." He nodded. "And I would have stayed blind." They stood there in silence as people passed by, unaware that inside that elegant dining hall, a single brave act had shattered a hidden empire. What Lila had done was unforgivable. What Clara had done was unforgettable. And what Adrian would do next, turning his company into a fortress of truth, would change not just his life, but the lives of everyone who worked under him. Because sometimes, the most powerful exposure doesn't come from cameras or courts. It comes from a quiet voice that refuses to stay quiet anymore. Asterisk. The next phase of the investigation unfolded like a storm that had been gathering for years and finally broke. Clara had barely settled into her new office when the first stack of documents arrived: bank statements, shipping manifests, restaurant supplier invoices, donation receipts from charities that no one could fully explain. Each page felt like a confession written in numbers. She sat at her desk late into the night, reading until her eyes burned, tracing the same patterns she had seen with her own eyes under the restaurant tables. Money disappeared in small amounts, then reappeared in places no one would suspect. Art auctions, hotel renovations, wine distributors, even children's hospitals. It was hidden inside good intentions and luxury purchases, disguised so cleverly that only someone who had watched it happen physically could recognize the rhythm. Adrian watched her work in silence more than once. He had known accountants, lawyers, and analysts his entire life, but none of them had the instinct Clara carried, the instinct of someone who had survived by paying attention to details that others ignored. "You see it, don't you?" he asked one evening as she spread documents across the table. She nodded. "It's not random. It's choreography. Every transaction dances around another one. If you pull one thread, 10 more move with it." He smiled faintly. "That's exactly what I was afraid of." They began cross-referencing names. The gray-coated man appeared again and again under different aliases. So did a woman who ran a luxury spa chain and a man who owned a fleet of private cars. It was no longer a personal betrayal. It was a network. News of the exposure started leaking despite Adrian's efforts to keep it quiet. Rumors reached boardrooms. Investors whispered at charity galas. Journalists hovered like birds waiting for something to fall. One night, Clara received a message from an unknown number. "Stop digging." She stared at the phone for a long time before showing Adrian. "Good," he said. "That means we're close." She didn't feel good. She felt hunted. Her apartment suddenly had security cameras. A driver waited outside every morning. Her name appeared on company memos. The waitress who once carried plates now carried responsibility heavy enough to tilt the future of a billion-dollar corporation. And then came the mistake from the other side. A courier was arrested in another city for a routine traffic violation. In his trunk, envelopes identical to the ones Clara had seen Lila hide. The address on one of them led directly to a shell company Adrian recognized. Within 48 hours, the entire chain unraveled. Executives resigned. Lawyers rushed into conference rooms. Emergency meetings lasted until dawn. The company's stock trembled but did not collapse. Adrian had moved too fast for that. Clara sat in the corner of one such meeting, watching powerful men and women who had never noticed her before now hang on her words. "She didn't act alone," Clara said, pointing to a projected screen of names and arrows. "She was the face. But the machine is here." The room went silent. One man stood. "This is madness. We'll destroy ourselves if this goes public." Adrian's voice cut through the tension. "We destroy ourselves if we hide it." The decision was made that day. Full exposure. Controlled, but honest. A press conference was scheduled. Clara had never seen so many cameras in one place. The lights made her feel smaller than ever, but Adrian insisted she stand beside him. "You started this," he said. "They should see who truth looks like." When Adrian spoke, his voice carried across the room like steel. "My company has been compromised by people I trusted. We discovered this not through auditors, but through a woman who refused to look away." He gestured toward Clara. She felt hundreds of eyes land on her at once. This woman worked in a restaurant. She saw what no one else bothered to see. And because of her, we uncovered a criminal network. Questions exploded from the crowd. "Was your girlfriend involved?" "Yes." "Did she steal from you?" "She stole from the company." "Why didn't you notice sooner?" "Because power makes you comfortable. Comfort makes you blind." Clara didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence was louder than words. That night, social media erupted. Some called her a hero. Others accused her of wanting fame. Conspiracy theories bloomed like weeds. But one thing could not be denied. The truth was out. The next weeks were dangerous. One of the implicated executives disappeared. Another tried to flee the country. Police raids filled the news. Frozen accounts surfaced. Properties were seized. The glamorous world that had surrounded Lila collapsed into legal documents and handcuffs. Clara received another message. You think you've won. You haven't. She showed Adrian again. He looked at her steadily. Fear is the last tool they have. For the first time, she believed him. Then something unexpected happened. A former employee from another restaurant came forward. Then another. Then a hotel clerk. Then a valet. They all told similar stories: envelopes, bags, coded gestures, quiet exchanges in luxurious places. Clara realized she was not alone anymore. She had started a chain reaction. At a closed meeting, Adrian told her, "You changed the rules." "I just told the truth," she replied. "That's how rules change." One evening, months later, Clara returned to the restaurant where everything began. Not as staff. As a guest, she sat at the same table. The basket was gone. The mirrors were still there, reflecting her from every angle. But she barely recognized the woman she had become. A waiter approached nervously. "Can I get you anything?" She smiled. "Just water, please." Adrian arrived shortly after. They sat in silence for a moment. "You could have ruined your life that night," he said. "I thought I already had nothing," she answered. "Turns out I had something worth protecting." Outside, people passed unaware that the quiet elegance of the restaurant masked the memory of an explosion that had started with a single sign and a shaking hand. And yet, the consequences were still unfolding, because what Clara did didn't just expose a crime. It exposed a system that relied on invisibility. And now, people everywhere were looking more closely at what had once been hidden in plain sight. She felt it when she walked down the street. The way strangers nodded at her. The way some avoided her eyes. The way others whispered her name. She had become a symbol, not of scandal, of courage. And somewhere, far from the cameras, those who had once laughed at her uniform were now watching there. Empires crumble piece by piece. The story was no longer about a waitress and a billionaire's girlfriend. It was about what happens when one ordinary person refuses to play along with an extraordinary lie. And the ending was not finished yet. Asterisk. The final chapter did not arrive with fireworks or applause. It came quietly, like the moment after a storm when the air still trembles, but the clouds have already broken. Months passed after the press conference, yet the consequences continued to ripple outward. Courtrooms replaced boardrooms. Prison uniforms replaced designer suits. Every week brought another headline, another arrest, another frozen account, another name added to the list of those who had built their wealth on silence and deception. Clara tried to return to a normal life. But normal had changed its meaning. Her mornings were no longer spent rushing between tables. Instead, she studied contracts, learned the language of finance, and trained with investigators who wanted her insight into how crimes hid inside everyday routines. She became someone who could read patterns in chaos. Sometimes she missed the simplicity of pouring water and clearing plates. But she knew she could never unsee what she had seen. Adrian watched her transformation with a mixture of pride and distance. Their lives now ran in parallel, not together. He had offered her a permanent position inside his company, security, research, compliance, but she had refused. The final chapter did not arrive with fireworks or applause. It came quietly, like the moment after a storm when the air still trembles, but the clouds have already broken. Months passed after the press conference, yet the consequences continued to ripple outward. Courtrooms replaced boardrooms. Prison uniforms replaced designer suits. Every week brought another headline, another arrest, another frozen account, another name added to the list of those who had built their wealth on silence and deception. Clara tried to return to a normal life, But normal had changed its meaning. Her mornings were no longer spent rushing between tables. Instead, she studied contracts, learned the language of finance, and trained with investigators who wanted her insight into how crimes hid inside everyday routines. She became someone who could read patterns in chaos. Sometimes she missed the simplicity of pouring water and clearing plates. But she knew she could never unsee what she had seen.